Welcome into another episode of That Betting Podcast with Predictology. My name is Kris, the MLS card guy, and we are joined, as usual, by our good friend John, the brains behind Predictology. How are you today, John?
I'm fantastic, Kris. Really looking forward to some of the European leagues coming back on this weekend, but as we fuck that up, grab that again.
It's all good. It's all good. It's all good. It's all good. All right. Do you want me to just start over?
Hang on. Yeah, start over completely.
Okay.
Just give me a second. I'm just trying to think how I say I'm great.
The more you think about it, the worse it's gonna get. Believe me. I've gotten into that spiral before, and it's just bad. Doesn't help anybody. All right. Just let me know when you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. Welcome into another episode of That Betting Podcast with Predictology. My name is Kris, the MLS guard guy. I am joined, as usual, by my good friend John, the brains behind Predictology. How are you today, John?
I'm great, Kris. Good to be here. Looking forward to doing another interesting show. Thought I'd kick things off with a fun fact of the week. Which side has had the most penalties this season? Actually, the second most penalty seasons this season.
Second most penalties this season?
Yeah, I'll give you a clue. I mean, not a clue. Like, I'm ruling New York out because they had 3 penalties in one game. So aside from that, this team would be top.
Oh no, that was gonna be my answer. 3 penalty, or no, that was New York. I can't say that. So the side with the second most penalties.
And I'll give you one more clue. They're on a run, a record-breaking run of 5 scored penalties in the last 5 games.
Oh, man. I have no idea who it is. No clue. Who is it?
I was shocked to see it myself. It is the Portland Timbers.
Oh, I do remember the penalty from the Seattle game. So I guess there's one.
So when Mora converted that in the 82nd minute, they extended their MLS record to 5 straight games with a converted penalty. And interestingly, they're spreading them around. Esprilla has had 2, Moreno's had 2, Blanco's 1, Paredes 1, and now Mora's had 1. So
that's horrible since I own Yumi Chara, who's like the only forward who hasn't taken one apparently. Really appreciate that, Portland. Thank you. So great way to start the show there for me. So I'm coming back I just got back from DC, going to the DC United against Bayern game, which was an absolute blast, but I'm a little dragging. So if I apologize if I'm not quite as energetic as I normally am, I guess, but a really great experience. Got to see some really good players, really cool players that I guess a lot of other people get to see on a daily basis, but here in the States, we don't get to see, FC Bayern quite that often. So really, really interesting time and a great trip if you ever get the chance to see Bayern.
Probably the only enjoyable game involving DC getting thumped this year that you've had, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was able to root against DC, so it was really easy. I told everyone as I got to the stands and we were standing in the supporter section, I was like, I'm rooting for both teams. So anytime a goal goes in, I'm going nuts. I don't care. And we ended up getting 8 of them. So I was quite pleased. We got a Delict scored at his first touch. We got a Mane goal. We got Thomas Muller scored. So yeah, the whole crew was getting in on the act. And then a couple youngsters scored for DC against Bayern. So they'll be telling that story their entire lives.
Excellent. And was Rooney on the bench for that one?
He was not. No, still Chad Ashton, still working out the work permit. So
okay, so he won't be on the bench for the weekend, or to be determined?
I don't know. I don't think so. But it's just whenever it comes through is when it comes through, and then after it comes through, he can coach. So I'm sure he's got his fingerprints all over the team by now. But obviously I guess we'll talk about DC United here in a little bit when we go through a few of the games, but we'll go ahead and start with our first featured game of the week, so to speak. We've got 5 of them. So
before we dive into that, maybe we should check out the should we check out the top bets from last week quickly before we get into the match?
Oh, I don't think we want to do that. I remember I wasn't very good, so I think we just skipped that part.
I thought you were skipping past that pretty quickly.
Yeah. Let's go for it. Best bets of the week. How do we do?
Yeah, I think the listeners are certainly following myself more than you, hopefully. So our best bet was from my end was LA to go up to, I think it was Nashville and win, which they did, and collected nice odds of 2.8.
Yeah.
You said both teams to score no in Miami is your best bet in a game that finished 3-2 or into Miami. So a little bit.
I'm good at this, John. I don't know if you know, I'm pretty good at this. No, Charlotte. So wait. In my defense, okay, Charlotte scored 2 worldy goals that they had no business scoring, and they didn't have any other chances the whole game. So I'd make that bet again. That was just Yordi Reyna not being nice to me because he's a former DC guy.
Yeah, and I admit the price was pretty good on that. So it was a value play, and the whole point of a value play is it doesn't come off every time, but you're getting the right price. We did a lot better, both of us, on our value favorite picks. I had Columbus won at 1.8, and you had RSL to win at home, and they won at 1.79. I just missed out on the draw plus Chicago, or was it Toronto? I can't see now. Against Montreal last week. Montreal actually kept a clean sheet, I think, which is quite a rarity, 1-0 win. And you had Austin, which very nearly came off. They were behind to Dallas, but got the equalizer, almost got the second, but was disallowed. But they maintained their run of being incredibly strong in those final 30 minutes, very threatening.
Yeah, you told me that I was bad before this, and those are 3 pretty good bets, so I want to stick by those. Even though I went 1 for 3, I was pretty close on the other 2 that I missed.
Yeah, no, we did pretty well across the board, actually. We had Chicago under 2.5, which was a win. Inter to win at home, which was a win. We both had Colorado, which was another win. Dallas to draw, and you had Austin in the draw, so we both won on that one with 2 different bets. Atlanta draw, so I missed out on the win on that one. Red Bulls couldn't get on the score sheet as New York put in a solid performance and won 1-0, so we both missed out there. San Jose was both teams to score, which we both went for and was a win. And we both had Portland to win, which was actually a loser, but I watched that game, and Portland were the dominant team. It just took them too long to get the equalizer, and they didn't have enough time left to go ahead and get the winner. But I think if you played that game over 100 times, Portland would probably win that 80 or 90 times, the way that game played.
Yeah, for sure. And I actually live bet the Atlanta game too when they were down 1-0. Atlanta was just coming in waves, and you could just tell that the goal was coming. So I actually had 2 bets. I had a Atlanta to win, draw no bet, and then I also had Atlanta to win from that point forward. So when it was 1-0, for Atlanta to win the rest of the game, and so obviously that one hit. The other one was a no bet. So I did end up winning a little bit on the live bets, but you could tell with Atlanta that it was coming, and Joseph Martinez hit the post, or else I might have snagged both of those 2 bets.
Yeah, I was very similar actually with the Inter Miami game. I had a 3-figure collect on that game with some trading in play when they were 2-0 down. So yeah, good. High fives all around.
Definitely, you can watch some of these games, and there's some opportunity when you're watching them to live trade. And I know that's a thing that we do with some of the pro members. So really cool stuff there. So we've got.
I was just going to say, I mean, the amount of times I've seen games in the MLS where a side goes 2 ahead and then the other side pulls it back. I mean, I should look at the stats, but it's pretty consistent. So there's definitely angles for the listeners at home if they're watching an MLS game. It's never over until it's over.
It's absurd with the amount of scoring in this league. It's never over. So let's go ahead and get into the games here. So we'll start with what you have rightly described as the crisis derby. We will start with the LA Galaxy against Atlanta United, and I'll let you start because you nicknamed it the crisis derby. So how do you see this game going here?
Yeah, look, I think listeners of the show will be familiar with some of the travails that Atlanta have had recently. I mean, that was sort of culminated in a 3-0 spanking at home from Austin. And I think there's at least some positivity coming out the Atlanta camp in that they've won 1 and drawn 1 since that time. Whereas LA Galaxy have just had it started before rivalry week, but rivalry week's been a shocker for them. They've had 3 games, 3 defeats, lost to LA, lost to San Jose, and actually lost 5 in the last 6. They've got 1 home win in the last 5, 2 home wins in the last 8. I think of the 2, I'm most concerned about LA at the moment, Galaxy. I think there's something off there at the moment. I know they've had a few injuries and stuff, but they're not scoring, and But certainly not the biggest issue is their defense, which I thought was a strength to them in past seasons. But I mean, at what point does Varney's job come under question marks? I mean, this is one of the highest salary caps in the league. There's a lot of attention. It's a little bit like I guess a Manchester United type scenario. You don't survive very long with a run of 5 games without a win. So it's what's the word on the ground over there, Kris?
I mean, this isn't the glory days of the LA Galaxy where they're bringing in Zlatan and they're bringing in, David Beckham, and they just have more talent than everybody else. So, yes, they do have some DPs that are pretty highly paid, but you really sit there and look at their DPs. Douglas Costa hasn't done anything. Chicharito is kind of in and out of the lineup, and sometimes he's good, sometimes he's not. And then Kevin Cabral has really not panned out the way that they had thought. So in the MLS, you have 3 DPs that don't really pan out, and you can be in trouble. I mean, look at Sporting Kansas City. 2 DPs gone for the year, and they're the worst team other than DC in the league. So it's a very dependent league on the DPs. I will say what started the season well for the Galaxy was defense. They had kept a number of clean sheets. They had one of the top defensive records in the league. And since they started kind of spiraling a little bit, it's been the defense that has more let them down. And they're starting to ship goals like they did last year. And it's just not a good sign at all. For Atlanta, I think you're 100% right. They got run by Austin 3-0 at home, which is Atlanta's very good at home traditionally. They don't let people come into Mercedes-Benz and win. I think they've only lost there 14 times in their entire club history. And they got really run against Austin. And then since then, Joseph Martinez had some comments, and I think that lit a fire under everybody. And the coach, to his credit, is benched Joseph Martinez because of the comments. He didn't play in the first one that they had, and then the draw, he came on when they were chasing goal. They did get the equalizer, and he hit the post, which would have been the winner. So Atlanta looks much better the last 2 games, but those are 2 games at home against, let's be fair, not the best competition. This is now a road game, which Atlanta has done absolutely atrocious in road games this year. They have 2 points from their last 7 away matches, and they've conceded 2 goals in each of the last 6 away matches. So they are shipping goals. LA Galaxy are shipping goals. It could end up being a pretty high scoring game. This is traditionally a game that Atlanta United dominates. Atlanta's won 3 or all 3 of the matchups so far, and they've outscored LA 9-0 in those 3 games. So Atlanta's had the Galaxy's number, but this is not the best Atlanta team that's going to come into the Galaxy Stadium here.
No, far from it. And you're absolutely right. Atlanta's position in the league is 100% due to their strong home form, that Austin defeat aside. I mean, in the last 6 away games, they've had 4 defeats and 2 draws, but in fact, they've only won once away all season, which is 11 games. I would be backing against Atlanta in any away game, generally speaking. But I think do you think Martinez has served his time? I think if he's back in the lineup, I would fancy Atlanta here. There for me is probably the value play of the weekend at 4.5, just because I'm that much hating on Galaxy at the moment. I think there will be goals in this, and I think Atlanta, particularly if Martinez starts, could run away with this one at 4.4 is a huge price.
It's just a massive number, right? There's too much value for that. I mean, for me, this game is more of a toss-up type game. I'm not sure Atlanta's going to come in and win this game, but I have 4.08 on my screen here. That's just a massive, massive number for me. And I think in a game with goals, you're going to get typically a winner. It's probably not going to end in a draw. So whether this game, I mean, if it ends up being a 50-50 game and you're getting 4.08 on Atlanta, you take that all day long. So I would lean slightly towards Atlanta, but I think the value for sure is in Atlanta's favor.
Yeah, this is the 50-50 game. I mean, like I said, Atlanta 1 win away all season. Galaxy just 2 wins at home in 8. This should be 2.8. Plus the draw to 2.8 on Atlanta. So, if it's a 50-50, you take a 4.5, 4.8 all day long. So,
right.
I'm not saying it's going to win, but that's where
it may not come
the
off.
Value is.
Right.
Yeah.
May not come off, but you hit one of these big ones. You hit one of these big ones, and it pays for the other ones that you don't hit. So, I think we both kind of in agreement on that game, and I think it's a decent value play here to start things off. Now,
Mm.
here's a game that I highlighted in my kind of recap, my article for Predictology this week, and it's a team under some special circumstances as well that I might add that's been pretty horrible hosting the best team in the league, and I don't get how LAFC is getting such a big, in my opinion, such a big number against Sporting Kansas City. The odds in this game, SKC is a home dog, 3.17. LAFC is 2.12. Where are you leaning with this sporting game?
Well, like I think I put my money where my mouth is last week with LA to go to Nashville, which is a much harder place to go, and they came out winners there at 2.8. Look, end of the day, they're the top of the Western Conference. They're the best second half team. They've won 9 and drawn 2 in the second half. The second highest scorers in the league with 40. They got a plus 18 goal difference. Whereas Kansas City, they're probably at the moment second or third worst team in the league. Lost, as you said earlier, 2 DPs out of the team. They did have a mini revival with a win in Montreal and a draw at Minnesota, but then lost 3-0 at Salt Lake. And I know that's not an easy venue to go to, but for me, LA away above evens, I mean, geez, you got to take that, right? The other thing that I spotted here, which I thought was an incredible price, was you can actually bet LA second half at 2.5.
Wow.
I mean, that's astonishing
That's
considering
absurd.
their second half form this season. So I'd be taking that bet every weekend until that form starts to change.
I'm going to make your bet look even better because the special circumstances that I alluded to earlier, Sporting Kansas City is hosting Sacramento Republic in the US Open Cup semifinals on Wednesday night. So they are likely to rotate at least maybe from the start, but they are at least going to try to pull some guys and not play 90 minutes for all of their players. So I don't know if that is helpful for the second half line or it hurts the second half line because they may just sit them at the beginning and bring them on in the second half. But yeah, I don't think this is a full strength SKC team either, at least for the full 90 minutes, which makes this even worse. And I don't know how LAFC, I mean, I get that this is in sport, like this is in Kansas City, which I think is the only reason this number isn't much lower. But this is a really, really good LAFC team. Like they could be historically good. The first half of this season, they're only the 6th team in MLS history with 42 points through the first 20 matches. And they just added Gareth Bale, Giorgio Chiellini, and potentially another DP striker to their team. This could be one of the better teams in history. The 2019 LAFC team, which is some consider to be the most talented of all time, had 46 points at this stage in 2019. So this is a really good team that is going to expect to win every single game, facing a team that is going to try and not get embarrassed by a second-tier team in the US Open Cup semifinals next week. And obviously, it's the semifinals, so they're going to try to add the trophy. But, I mean, they also have to consider that they may get embarrassed by Sacramento. It's at Sacramento, too.
Well, I think with that information in mind, we should pause the show and go and take those prices before they disappear.
Yeah, I don't know why. I said this literally in my article. I don't know why LAFC is 2.12. It's absurdly high. It's gonna be, I mean, we may both have to take that as our value bet because that's just easily the best bet of the weekend.
Yeah, look, I think it's important to say that no game is a lock, and no game is guaranteed. We're strong advocates of responsible betting, but this is a very attractive price on LA. So if you're seeing something around that, you'll definitely get a good run for your money, but bet responsibly as well.
You're way more diplomatic than I am. The one note here, Sporting Kansas City has never lost 4 straight home matches, and they have lost 3 straight home matches. So they are going to try and avoid making history, but I don't know that they're going to do it.
Well, I always say records are there to be broken, so maybe that's this week.
We're going to see one record fall, I think, this week. So we're going to move on. Game number 3 of our featured games for the week is Seattle taking on Colorado. Seattle has been in a really poor run of form, and you are all over the hating Seattle bandwagon, which I love. Seattle's at 1.9 as the home favorite. The Colorado Rapids come in at 3.82. Defend yourself. Why do you think Seattle is bad?
Well, first, I think maybe a little bit of context for the listeners. So would I be right in saying that Seattle's one of those teams that unless you support Seattle, everyone hates them? So it's a little bit like Manchester United. Would you say that's a fair analysis?
In MLS play, yes, but the entire league was rooting for them in the CONCACAF Champions League because we just want to see a MLS team win. So Seattle has some good grace from that, but yeah,
Mhm.
in general, if you're not from Seattle or like a big bandwagon fan, I know a ton of bandwagon Seattle fans. If you're not one of those, you don't typically like when they come to your town.
Yeah, fair enough. And that sounds fair. Look, I think if Manchester United or whoever was in a Champions League final against another European side, we'd absolutely, as a country, be majority supporting that team. So yeah, I would say the similarities are there with a Liverpool or a Manchester United, for example. But yeah, I mean, I was pretty blunt before we started recording the show. I am incredibly disappointed with Seattle, considering the pieces in their team. I know you said that there's a couple of injuries, but as a front six, in terms of the quality of players that they can call upon, um, to lose 3 of the last 5, to fail to score in the last 3 games. This is the most stark statistic for me, which really shows where the problems are. Is they're 20th in the table for goals scored. Both conferences combined. I mean, for
Yeah.
a team of Seattle stature, for the reigning CONCACAF Champions League champions, for the amount of forward players they can put on a pitch, whether that's a Ladero, a Morris, a Rosnak. I know he's playing further back this year. I know Rui Diaz has had some time on the sidelines, but the bottom line is they shouldn't be 20th in the table for goals scored.
No.
So their home form is fairly good, their defensive line's fairly good, but the reason that they are underperforming is that they're just not scoring. I don't know whether that's tactical, whether the players underperforming, but I'm just really I'm happy to go against Seattle for the time being, and Colorado did look good against a poor Galaxy last week. So yeah,
Colorado did look good.
defend Seattle. I dare
did
you.
did look good at home against the LA Galaxy last week. This game is being played in Seattle. You said Seattle has good home form, and that is one reason why I think Seattle is a fairly safe favorite in this game for me. Just because Colorado has been absolutely horrific on the road this year. I think they only have 3 points in all their road games this year. We've documented how much better they are at home than they are on the road. This is still a game that Jack Price is questionable for. He's such a big piece of that team. And until he comes back, I'm not comfortable taking Colorado on the road anywhere, much less Seattle, much less a mad Seattle. And finally, your point is kind of my point. They're 20th in the table in goals scored. They can defend, which is the hardest part to do in the MLS, but they're 20th in the table in goals scored, and they have all these offensive pieces. They're gonna score goals at some point. It's just a matter of time. I'm gonna continue to back Seattle, and this is typical Seattle too. You start off the season slow. They got back into it with a nice little run. Now they're a little slow in the midsummer, but eventually here they're going to find it and they're going to start scoring and they're going to be completely unstoppable because you can't score on them. And once they start scoring 2 or 3 goals a game, it's just going to be, they're just going to roll teams at some point this summer, and they're going to be fine. They're going to make the playoffs. And when they get into the playoffs, they know what to do. So this is still a team that's top 3 to win the MLS Cup for me, even though they aren't playing like it right now, but they are still dangerous. I'm just telling you, having watched this league for a long time, they are dangerous.
Don't dispute it. Like I said, I haven't questioned the quality in that team, and I should caveat things that my prediction for this game is actually not Colorado to win. I've actually got a bet that's a recommended bet for this, which is nearly 5-1. And I'll just give some stats on why I think this is the one for this game. So last week's show, which we recorded a little earlier, so it's actually ahead of the midweek games and the weekend games, I was highlighting the fact that the draw ratio was considerably down in the league. And it was just a fraction over 18% compared to a near 23% league average over the last 5 years. Now that's risen to over 19% now. So there has been a number of draws
Right.
in the league in the last 2 rounds. The 1-1 scoreline has also jumped back from 9.13 up to just over 10%, which is in line with the year average. However, there's one outlier in all of this, which is the halftime draw, full-time draw, which is still sitting at 7.99% against a 5-year average of 12.51. So it's 40% down on average. So I've been trying to pick out a couple of games this week, which I think may fit the criteria of to being a tight match, potentially level at the halftime, potentially level at the break. And this is one of the games that I would be looking to do that too. Like you say, Colorado haven't been strong away, but they will be in positive mood from that result against Galaxy. I think they'll come here to defend. They're not expecting to dominate. Seattle is struggling in front of goal. They'll try and be cautious and pick a steal a win. I think there's every chance at 5.8, so nearly 5-1 of this being a draw halftime, draw full time.
I actually don't hate that. That's one way that this game could go. I could 100% see that. And you're talking about a huge underdog type play. You only needed to come off once in order to hit it and kind of make your money back. So I don't hate that at all. I still am gonna lean Seattle to win. Because you talked about Seattle's struggle scoring goals. They have 26 goals this year. Do you want to know who scored less than 26 goals? Colorado, and they don't have Jack Price. So
yeah,
I
expectation wise, that's probably fair.
Yeah.
But
yeah, no, I mean Colorado is like Seattle coming into this game facing Colorado expects and should fairly expect to get 3 points in this game. If this is tied late, it's going to be Colorado hanging on. Colorado is going to play for a draw if they can. So that I can't really see Colorado winning this game because they'd have to be ahead early and then hang on for the whole game. And I could see maybe a draw squeaking out. Like if it's 0-0 or 1-1 at halftime, maybe I could see Colorado just hanging on for dear life, and maybe they can squeak it out. But I would still think Seattle would be the odds-on favorite to squeak it out. Not 5-1 favorites, or 1-5, I guess, to flip it.
No, I think that's fair, and they're actually priced at a reasonable level at 1.9 according to my screen here. You know, I think a lot of Seattle games you'd see them going off at 1.6, 1.7. So there is some form factored into that price. Yeah. I mean, on a normal scenario, that is a good price. I mean, like if you're really strong into Seattle, I wouldn't put anyone putting off that price. I prefer to go for the longer odds play on this one, but I certainly respect your thoughts on this one, and it could well be right.
One last thought on this game here before we move on. Seattle has owned this rivalry between these two. It's not a rivalry, but they're in the Western Conference. They play a lot. To be fair, Rapids have won 3 of the last 6 matches. Before that, though, Seattle had won 20 of the first 25 matches. Won 20 of the first 25 matches in this series. Seattle typically plays very, very well against Colorado. I expect this to be an angry Seattle team, and I expect 3 points. And if they don't, I'm going to be pretty disappointed. I'm going to start looking and start asking some more deeper questions if we don't start to see some results soon, but I'm not to that point yet. I still am a firm believer that Seattle is going to turn this thing around.
I admire your faith.
Number 4, a team that we have had some faith in and been rewarded for that faith early in the season here. Austin hosts the New York Red Bulls. Red Bulls were a team that I did not have faith in at the beginning of the season, but quickly flipped my mind, and they've been good for me for most of the season. Austin, a team I've been on all season long, and they have been absolutely pouring out results. There's some caveats to go with this game as well that we'll get into in a second. But just for the quick line, Austin 2-5-2 at home. New York Red Bulls 2-6-5 on the road. So a virtual toss-up. Where do you see this game going?
I think that, well, the first thing to say is that that's a pretty big price on Austin, 2.5. I think for me, this is it's probably going to, it's a very fascinating game. I'm really looking forward to trying to watch this one. You know, Austin were a value play last week. They ended up coming away with a draw in Dallas after 4 straight away wins, but it so easily could have been 5 straight away wins, which would be very impressive. Their home form is actually stronger than their away form. They're averaging 2 points per game. They got 5 wins from 9 at home so far this season. That said, New York Red Bulls are the second best away side in the league behind Austin of all teams. You know, they had 6 wins out of their 11 games so far, but I think the one concern for Red Bulls is only one of those wins has come in the last 5. So they effectively got 5 in 6, and they're 1 in 5 since then. And you know, they're coming off the back of a tough derby against NYC, which they lost 1-0. For me, I think I have to side with Austin. If I was going anywhere in this, it's a hard place to go. They're a very strong team. We've mentioned it seems to mention Austin every week. There's a lot to like about this Red Bull team. I think they're showing a lot more metal and tactical now, some maturity than perhaps we expected this season, and certainly from last season. Just yeah, fascinating game. I would have to edge with Austin at that price. I would have thought they'd have been closer to even money.
Yeah.
So that'd be where I'd look at this.
Yeah, I think that's the right play here. As a toss-up game, I am leaning Austin. Had this been a little more like a normal home away split, because I mean, if it's a toss-up in the actual odds, then they're saying if they play this at a neutral field, the Red Bulls would be favored, and I don't know that that's true. I think at a neutral field, Austin is probably the favorite. A couple of notes here as far as some special circumstances. So we mentioned Sporting Kansas City has the U.S. Open Cup semifinal. Red Bulls is also in that. So they play Orlando in the other semifinal. So that is potentially something we could see some rotation in this game from Red Bulls. Also, Red Bull's system is very high tempo, and that does not tend to work in the Texas heat. They have only won one of their last 7 games in Texas. So that's dating back to July of 2014. This is a system that has proven over and over again that it doesn't work well in very, very hot temperatures. And I would expect this game to be very, very hot. This is a very good Austin team. And I think we talked about it last week. It's just disrespectful to Austin to put them at this low a number with how good they've been. And granted, we talked as well last week about how they've been a little lucky and we expect them to regress to the mean sum. But this is still disrespectful at this price. It's a good New York team. It's not a great New York team, though. And this is still in Austin.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you all there. And I think that's a very poignant and interesting stat about their record in Texas. If I wasn't sure before, I'm even more positive on Austin for this game.
Yeah, I think both of us agree on that one. So we'll kind of move along a little bit here. Our final featured game of the evening, Houston. Well, it's evening for me. I guess it's morning for you. Houston and Minnesota. So Houston comes in here, not in the best form, I would say. They have kind of struggled a little bit after I thought they had a decent start to the season. They've kind of fallen off a little bit of a cliff. Whereas Minnesota comes in some absolutely sizzling form. They've been hot in the league and they just destroyed Everton, just absolutely obliterated them. So, where do we think this game goes here? So Houston comes in home favorites at 2-1. Minnesota on the road is 3.04.
Yeah, I think there's strong form lines for both sides to make in this game. I think we'll start with Houston. They won in San Jose last time out, but that ended a run of 3 defeats and a draw in the previous 4. Incredibly, they're sitting 11th in the Western Conference out of 14 teams, but actually just 2 points from the playoffs, which shows nothing's over until it's over in this league. But the really stark stat for me is that only Kansas City have lost more games than Houston this season. Houston have lost 12 games. So they're either winning or losing, not drawing too much. So yeah, I'm a little bit worried by Houston. They're definitely not on a good run. Obviously, being at home makes a difference, but that defeat number is very concerning. You know, if you're winning some, drawing some, you can say it's fine margins. But if you're getting beaten that many times, it indicates that there's something wrong in the team, whether it's mental, tactics, or something. But a lot of those, you're not converting those defeats into more positive results. Minnesota, on the other hand, I think a few weeks back, you and I were both extremely positive about the potential of this team. You had some pretty strong feelings on Adrian Heath and his tactics, who then signed a contract the following day. But it does seem that maybe he was listening a little bit, because they've been on a heater for the last 4 or 5 games. You know, they've got 4 wins out of 5 in the MLS. They, as you said, quite amusingly spanked Everton 4-0. They're really hot in form, and they're actually sitting 4th in the table now, which is, you don't see Minnesota up in those dizzy heights too often. So this is a team that I think has a great spine to it, and they're probably, their confidence is increasing game by game, and I think it's very open what they can achieve this season. So I think it's also interesting that they've won 3 and drawn 2 in the last 5 editions of the game with Houston. So I think Houston are a little bit short for this game based on everything we've covered. Whereas the fact you can get Minnesota draw no bet, so a refund if the game finishes a draw at 2.3, looks like a nice value play for me.
Yeah, I would agree with that sentiment as well. And I mean, for Minnesota, to be fair, their wins have been against some shaky teams at best. LA Galaxy 3-2, Real Salt Lake 3-2. That was at Allianz Field in Minnesota, so not at Rio Tinto. They lost 3-1 at BC Place, the toughest place to play in North America. And then they drew Kansas City 1-1, and then they beat DC United 2-0. So there's a lot of poor teams in that run. So maybe this is a little bit of a mirage. Maybe this is a little bit of just caught a nice part of the schedule. But Houston is also kind of in that bottom tier, if we want to call it that. But they're not far away from being. I mean, you mentioned they're 2 points. 2 points behind the playoff line right now, and their goal differential is only -2. They have a ton of losses, but they also have a ton of wins. They're just not drawing. So it's Houston's definitely not out of it. That win against San Jose was massive for them. Really crushed San Jose. That was a big game towards the bottom of the table. But this is one where Minnesota needs to get all 3 points. But it's also a game where it's going to kickstart a tough run for them. They're going to play home against Portland next, at Colorado. We've talked about how tough Colorado is at home, and then at Nashville, home against Austin. So it's a really tough run these next few games. So I think this will tell us really where Minnesota is, because they were a couple of years ago in the Western Conference Final, 2-0 up in Seattle and on their way to the MLS Cup. They fell apart, haven't been the same team since, but this is still a team that's got the talent to make that kind of run again this season.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think this is a team that, I keep saying it, but I like their spine. I think they're relatively secure in goal. They've got at least a good centre half. There's Reynoso. There's a couple of other players that bring up any that names escape me. But this is a team that fights. Then they'll win a game 3-2 and they'll lose another game 3-2. But I think it's not one I particularly would be betting hard into, because you just don't quite know with Houston, and it's not an easy place to go. But at the moment, at the prices, the value for me is in Minnesota, but it could so easily be a Houston win as well. So that's why I'd tread carefully with the draw no bet in this one if you were having a play.
Yeah, the other thing, I mean, Houston at home, it's only 4 wins, 3 losses, and 4 draws. So it's not like they have an overwhelming home field advantage. But again, this will be Texas heat, so we'll have to see how Minnesota does in the Texas heat. I think that is going to just about cover us for our featured games. Let's just kind of quickly run through the rest of the games, see if we have any feelings one way or the other. We'll start with New York City hosting Inter Miami, a big number here, 1.37 on NYC. Inter Miami 7.44 after getting run by Barcelona in absolutely horrible fashion. What do we think here? Is this a decent value, or is NYC just going to run away with this thing?
Look, I think New York, NYC are absolutely justifiable favorites for this one. I think if we're a little creative, we can still find value in this match. I would be looking at NYC to either win to nil at 2.45 or NYC to win the second half at 1.7. I think you still get that's still allowing you the opportunity to get behind NYC in a significant way, but with much better odds than that's available right now. I can't see anything but beyond the NYC winning this. They're by far a stronger team. They seem to have settled down since that shaky period where they were conceding 2 goals a game. They've had 2 clean sheets in the last 2 games, both away from home. Whereas Inter Miami, look, I think there's been a lot of positive things we've said about them this season, but most of that is coming from their games at home. Away from home, they're picking up 0.56 points away compared to 1.82 at home. And they've only scored in 44% of those away games. So I'd definitely be siding with NYC and either that clean sheet or them to run right, to win the second half. I think both presents value in this fixture.
Pozuelo is a big addition to Inter Miami, so he does make a big difference, and perhaps that allows them a little more opportunity in this game. And 7.4 is just a really big number on Inter Miami, a team that I think is not great, but is at least not DC United bad. So I don't know. Maybe I'd take a shot in the dark with Inter Miami on that big a line, but this game is going to end up in a New York City win, I think. Um,
Mm.
I don't think there's too much here. And this is also at Yankee Stadium, not Red Bull Arena. So teams just don't go into Yankee Stadium and win, specifically not just average teams. So I would still side with New York City, but that's a big number.
Mm.
Next one, Cincinnati against Nashville. This is a really fascinating game. Two teams that are not separated by very many miles, but are in different conferences. Cincinnati in the Eastern Conference, Nashville in the Western Conference, despite the fact that it's like 3 hours to drive between them. Cincinnati is 2.39 at home. Nashville is 2.85 on the road.
Yeah, look, I think Cincinnati have some echoes of Minnesota in terms of they're definitely improving this season compared to recent times. They're becoming a bit more prolific in front of goal. I think it was 9 in the last 5. They're a team that's sort of raising their expectation bar a little bit, but Acosta, I believe, is still suspended, and I think that's a huge loss for them. I think it's no surprise that after they lost in Columbus last week. I don't think they scored in that game either, which I think is a big indication of Costa's value in this. I can't see the value is for me in this one's clearly with Nashville. Until Acosta's back in that team, I think Cincinnati are susceptible. They did lose in Charlotte last week. Is that a derby game? I think it has echoes of a derby, doesn't it?
I mean, it's Charlotte's first
really.
year, so not
Yeah.
really, but
Yeah, I mean, prior to that, they'd won 4 of the last 5, and 2 of those goals did come very late in the game to flatter the scoreline a little bit. Yeah, I wouldn't be putting anything behind Cincinnati until Acosta's back in the team. And just one side fact: Nashville is the only side in the conference in both conferences with a scratch goal difference. They've scored 27, conceded 27. Do with that what you will, but Nashville at 2.85 looks a big price for me.
they are very consistent. They are perfectly even on the goal line. Yeah, you nailed it. Lucho Acosta's not in this game. Last 2 games that he's missed. Cincinnati 2-2 draw at home against Vancouver, and then they got run 2-0 in Columbus. So yeah, he's vital to this team. Absolutely vital. I would almost like this number if he were playing, but with him not playing, I want to just stay away. I don't want this game at all. Because I don't 100% trust Nashville either. But yeah, I think I just stay off of this game. Let's see. Next game is going to be Columbus Crew against New England. Now, I said this is one of my favorite games of the week, just from a watching standpoint, because these are 2 teams that I'm very high on for the rest of the season. I think they've both kind of figured out their early season struggles, and I think they're both coming in the Eastern Conference. So it'll be interesting to see where they are against each other. Columbus is at home, 2.10. New England, 3.28 on the road.
Yeah, again, I think this is, for me, is a game to watch with interest. New England are in the 3rd of their 3 away games in a row. They lost in New York and in Philly. Columbus, I think we sort of hinted at this recently. They're looking more threatening, and it's certainly potential of a late season push for them now that they've sort of sorted that forward line a little bit. They've won 3 and drawn 2 of the last 5. I've sort of circled this one similar to Seattle. I'd be playing the draw in this one. Again, about 5.8 is the odds, which I think could give a good run for the money at low stakes, because it's not a game I'd particularly be betting in otherwise.
I think I stay away from this game as well because of the number on Columbus. I think I'm going to lean Columbus, but I don't know if I'm going to lean that heavily to Columbus. So, yeah, I mean, NYC coming off of back-to-back tough road games, man, like tough, going to Philadelphia and to New York City. Those are just 2 places you don't win. Columbus is kind of sort of becoming that. Columbus is up to 6th in the standings, by the way, and Chucho Hernandez is an absolute revelation. He's been absolutely everything that Columbus could have ever dreamed that he would be. So I am going to lean Columbus in this game, but New England is still a team that I like a lot, so I don't really want to bet against them either. Any other thoughts on this one?
No, not really. I think everything you've said is valid. These are 2 interesting, fairly evenly matched sides, and but we'll be interested to see what the result is. And
I want to see I want to see where New England is in this game, because this is about where the level that I think they should be playing out the rest of the year, where they can be competitive in Columbus. So this will be an interesting test. If they get like blown away in this game, that'll raise some flags for me. But yeah, this is more one I want to watch for future bets as opposed to betting on this one specifically. Another one that's really interesting: Orlando City and Philadelphia. Orlando at home 2.43. Philadelphia goes on the road 2.81.
Yeah, like along with Minnesota, this is one where I was quite surprised to see where Orlando was sitting in the table. I thought they'd be a bit lower than fifth, and they're actually only 2 points behind Montreal and 3 behind Red Bulls, who we've been pretty positive about both of those sides at certain points. So they seem to be quietly going about their business. And Philly, you would probably put in that same category. They've been kind of semi under the radar in the last month or so, but have actually moved top of the Eastern Conference. So they're certainly the Philly that we know of old and performing pretty well. Yeah, I'm a little bit torn on this one. Again, it's quite hard to find value in this one, or not value, but a position that I want to take. I can see it going either way. I was semi-tempted when looking at the markets that backing the draw and under 2.5 goals could be interesting at 4.5 because Orlando aren't scoring too many. So yeah, I think this could be a tight game.
Yeah, I think it's a tight game. It's an interesting game. It's a great game to see where Orlando is in the standings, because you're right. It's like, how are they fifth? Because they've gotten some horrific results at home, like getting run by DC. They lost early in the season to Cincinnati. They have a couple of they have 5 home losses, which is not typically what you're going to see from a playoff team. Like none of the other, let's see. The only other teams with 5 losses at home this season in the Eastern Conference are Toronto and DC at the bottom of the table. So that is weird, but they've been really good on the road. They've only lost 2 road games this year. Unfortunately for them, this game is at home. Maybe they should just pick a neutral site and play there, because maybe they won't get run at home. Philadelphia is just good everywhere. They only have 2 losses this year, so it's tough for me to see Orlando beating Philly. Philly have been the draw kings throughout the rest of this season. So it'll be really interesting to see how this game is just from an Orlando perspective and see where they end up. The other thing to note here, just quick note, Orlando, we mentioned before, they play Red Bulls in the US Open Cup semifinal, so potentially more rotation in this game. Next game is going to be Toronto against Charlotte. Toronto comes in as a home favorite. Is this the game that they finally get their clean sheet here against a Charlotte team that's really struggled on the road? 2.18 for Toronto, 3.1 for Charlotte.
Yeah, like I don't think Charlotte's, and I know I've been one highlighting this, but I don't think their away form is as bad as we perhaps think it is. For a team of their level, they get beat, and then they pick up a couple of points here. They've been close in a couple of games. They were 2 up against Miami. They're going for it in these away games. I wouldn't expect them to win too many away from home. I know I've sort of chanced Toronto in the last couple of weeks for that clean sheet. I'm sort of gonna stop chasing that illusion. Toronto, I would put them in the same category as DC and Seattle at the moment. They're not Seattle, sorry, Kansas.
I was gonna say, whoa, did you just put DC and Seattle in the same category? Hold on, I know you don't like them, but geez,
I know I've been down on them, but that's probably going too far. Yeah, look, there's not much interest for me in this game. Charlotte are battlers, and I think they've done themselves proud this year. Toronto are poor. 3 goals in the last 5 games, 4 defeats, no clean sheets since 1946. It's there's not a lot to rave about here. So if you absolutely were sticking a gun against my head, I'd have to side with Charlotte purely on the draw no bet. So maybe Charlotte go there and nick a 1-0. Maybe Toronto nick a 1-0, and that run finally ends. Who bloody knows? Honestly, nothing with confidence in this one.
I think this is the start of the Insigne revolution here, because I think we finally get our first look at Insigne. I think we get a look at Bernardeschi. I think the whole kind of squad, I don't think they all start, but I think we get a look at them. And I get the feeling that it's going to be some energy in the building. Here's my caveat with Toronto. They play the Canadian Championship against Vancouver in the midweek, so might they rotate in this game? I don't know if they really want to make a push in the playoffs this year, which I mean, they signed a bunch of players, so I would assume that they do. This is one they have to get 3 points in. So I might not even rotate in that midweek game. However, the Canadian Championship is for a spot in the Champions League next year. So which one do you want to go after? If you're Toronto, I think you kind of got to go after both, to be honest, but they may not be in that position at this point with their depth. Toronto's problem has always been goal concession. Charlotte has not been, let's say, prolific on the road. They are starting to score more, to be fair. 2 goals in Houston to finally get their first away win, and then 2 goals in Miami, but then they blew that lead 3-2. So to be fair, they are starting to score more goals. I might actually take Toronto to keep a clean sheet in this game, though. I think this might be the game. So I'm gonna pick up where you left off and take that clean sheet for Toronto, and I'll take a 0-0 result to halftime and then a 1-0 Toronto win.
Yeah, you make a fair case for that, and I wouldn't dissuade anyone. Basically, I wouldn't bet on this one, but
I wouldn't bet on it either.
It could so easily be a 1-0 to either side in this one.
It could be 4-3 to either side, honestly. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I'm just making a very specific case so that if it happens, I look very smart next week. DC
totally. Like, if they're going to keep a clean sheet in a game anytime before 2030,
might be the one.
Probably
might be the one. Yeah. DC United against Montreal Impact. DC United come off a fantastic 5-2 loss to Bayern Munich. They actually, in the second half.
It was
6-2. You're correct. I'm sorry. Muller scored very late on, so I had it in my head as 5-2. You are correct, though. But I would say that's maybe the best game they've played all year, at least in the second half. The unfortunate part is none of those guys on the field will be playing in this game because the starters all played on the first half and got absolutely smoked by Bayern. DC is 2.41 at home. Montreal's 2.74 on the road. I don't know that I particularly trust Montreal, but I do know that I don't trust DC United, and that's enough for me to fade DC United in this game.
Yeah, basically same views as me until, I mean, we were talking before the show, Rooney is not likely to be on the bench for this one. I'm sure he's doing a lot behind the scenes, but I think you can read absolutely zero into the Bayern game, both from a performance and a result perspective. You know, it doesn't mean anything into the grander scheme of things. You know, Montreal are still top 3, top 4, I think. So until we start seeing anything different from DC, then, you know, Montreal to win with the money back on the draw above evens has to be the play, really, for me.
For sure. And one of the only guys that did not play in that friendly was Taxi Fountas, and that tells me he's not ready to play. He's not healthy. Even if he makes a cameo in this game, I still don't think it's probably enough to save DC United. By the way, the 2 guys that scored against Bayern Munich both play for Loudoun, who's their like B team in the lower division. So neither one of them will actually play in this game. I don't like DC at all.
No, you'd have to think if Fantas was close to being back, they'd have given him 20 minutes in that game.
Right, exactly.
It's not heavy tackles. It's you just run around for 20 minutes. If he didn't even come on the pitch, he's not ready for the weekend. Is my opinion.
And it's a showcase game for him possibly going back to Europe on a big move. If he plays really well against Bayern Munich, then somebody might say, "Oh my gosh, I got to have this guy," and offer them $10 million. So yeah, if he didn't play, it was because in my opinion, that's a sign that he's not going to play this weekend. If he doesn't play,
Agreed.
DC United at 2.41 is absurdly high. There's no way that they should be anywhere near that number, even at home. Next game, let's move on here. Covered that one. RSL is taking on Dallas. We've talked about how hard Rio Tinto is to play at. 2.02 on RSL. Dallas is 3.52 going on the road. They've had some tough form, but can they go to Rio Tinto and get a result?
Well, I think the first thing to say here is that, and it may have moved since I did this analysis, but RSL above evens at home with that record just seems bizarre to me. So I wouldn't put anybody off that being a value play. It does sort of feel like Austin have taken Houston and Dallas's win, because Dallas are on a similarly poor run to Houston. They got 5 draws, 3 defeats in 9 games. I was actually quite surprised when looking at it how far back their poor form has gone, because I've always been quite positive towards Dallas. You know, they're a nice young team. They play good football. The forwards, I always like watching Ferrer and Velasco, for example. But yeah, I mean, 1 win in 9 games is pretty dire, really. But again, it seems to be they're not struggling to score, as we've highlighted. They got some lovely players going forwards, but conceding too many and turning those into draws and draws into defeats. That said, if any team could go to RSL and put on a performance, it's Dallas, right? And they have done that in I think they lost the last 2 against RSL, but they have a fairly decent record in Vancouver, in Salt Lake. So, you know, purely from a value perspective, RSL would be the natural pick here. But Dallas would certainly make me nervous going in too hard on that one, because this is a Dallas side that could go and win 3-0 or lose 3-0.
We've talked about how these teams like the Red Bulls, like Dallas, that are very young and have a lot of talent, in Atlanta, they can go out and just put on a show and just be completely unplayable any given day. But overall, they're still not that great. Dallas is kind of a weird one, though, because while Atlanta, there are clear problems there, right? New York has kind of figured out their clear problems. Dallas are tough because Dallas aren't conceding a ton of goals. Like 25 isn't bad. You said they're scoring goals. They have over 30 goals this year. They're +6 goal differential. They're just like conceding very ill-timed goals and like very like they're up 2-1 and they concede, or they're tied 1-1 and they concede. It's not necessarily the overall picture. It's just in specific moments they just have these weird letdowns almost.
It's age, inexperience, and maturity. That's what you get from a young side. They're going to be inconsistent from week to week, and they're probably on the end of a downswing period of that inconsistency. We could easily see them in a month's time, you know, winning 3 and drawing 2 of the next 5. But that's what you get with a very young side. They can have those lapses of concentration, or miss that chance that they should put away in the last minute, or concede in the last minute, lose their man on a corner, because that's what you get with a young, inexperienced team. I think with this game, if you're playing it safe, backing both teams to score at 1.7, I think is a pretty safe bet.
That's
not
fair.
Exciting, but a safe one.
I just stay away from it. I think the value's on RSL, but I don't like picking RSL over Dallas, even at home. I just don't. It doesn't sit well with me. Like Dallas just has too much talent, and they could just run RSL. We talked about Seattle and Colorado. Vancouver hosts the Chicago Fire in a brand new Z Soccer podcast derby that we didn't know we were going to get 2 weeks ago, because Julian Gressel has been traded to Vancouver. Vancouver is 2.3 at BC Place, the toughest place to play in North America, and Chicago Fire 2.97 going on the road. Where are we going on this one, Johnny?
Yeah, look, I think I'll start with Chicago and semi give myself a little pat on the back. That I highlighted this, I think, in our first episode, that they were underperforming their XG and their form was pretty poor, but everything indicated in the stats that we could see an upturn in those performances. And you know, they've won the last 2. I'm not saying that they're setting the field aligned, but we are seeing a steady improvement in how they're playing and the results they're picking up. From a Vancouver perspective, as always, proving hard to beat. They've had 2 solid away draws, only 2 defeats in their last 10. They're just a hard team to play against and a hard team to beat. They're not necessarily the most exciting games. I tend to not watch too much Vancouver. Again, this is a game I probably wouldn't be getting involved in if you were just basing it on the home record. 2.3 is fairly big for Vancouver, but I'm quite favorable towards Chicago and what they can do in the next few weeks. So probably maybe a draw in this one, but again, I'm not going too hard either way.
So Chicago has gotten to that place where they're just close enough to the line to where you're like, okay, we can start to hope again. And it's scary because they have 6 points. They have 6 points all at home, and one of them against one of the 3 worst teams in the league at that point, at least in Toronto. Now, a 1-0 win against Seattle is a good win. I'm going to be the first one to admit that. That's a good win whether you're playing them here, there, or anywhere. But going to BC Place, I think we've talked about BC Place. You know how I say it's the toughest place to play in North America. That's tough. It's a tough place to play. So I don't love Chicago going there. I do love that Shaqiri's back. I would be all over Vancouver on the home line here, except for the fact that they are probably way more focused on Toronto in the midweek in the Canadian Championship because they're going to want to play in the Champions League and they're not going to want to let Toronto play in the Champions League next year. So I'm actually kind of anticipating some rotation here. May not be a bad thing because they are a pretty deep team as far as MLS teams go. They do bring in brand new Julian Gressel. How does he fit into this side? Does he start? Does he come off the bench? I would assume that he starts because he's obviously in midseason form and he fits their system so perfectly. They absolutely robbed DC United. I don't know what DC United's doing with that trade, but that's beside the point. Vancouver's a tough team to pick. I would tend to say that they have the value, but the rotation risk scares me. So I'm just going to stay away from this game in general. But I always love me some 2.3 at BC plays.
Yeah, well, first I'd say, well, in answer to the DC thing, DC are just doing DC things, but that's by the by. Like you say, you can make a strong case for Vancouver, but you can also make a bit of a case for Chicago, and they're at that tipping point. They're either going to kick on now and perform better in the run-in,
right,
or they could just break your heart and go back to what they've been doing in the recent months. So I think that midweek game is an interesting factor, and that sort of confirms for me to stay away from this game.
And we're back from our mini commercial break there. We were not expecting. So John, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see that John's background has now changed and you might hear some more background noise. So tell all the people listening at home what's happened.
Well, I think I have to say hashtag more fun in the Philippines. So right towards the end, as we were discussing the Vancouver game, my power went out and no sign of that one coming back anytime soon. Tethering normally works, but today the phone network also not working. So I've had to run down the street, pop into a nice resort near my house. And here I am at the bar, finishing off the podcast while they said a wedding behind me. So good times.
This is how you finish a podcast at the bar with a wedding. So yeah, that's why you may hear some different things here as we end things up. Let's talk really quickly. I think we only have one more game to get to here. Portland and San Jose. San Jose, the really disappointing loss to Houston that I said they really needed to win. That was a huge game for them. Couldn't come through. Portland, we mentioned at the beginning how they have been on a tear with the penalties. Is that something that's maybe a little concerning that all they're doing is just drawing penalties? And that's how they're getting some results here. But anyway, Portland is 1.68. And San Jose Earthquakes 4.31. What do we see in this game?
Yeah, I think Portland are another one of those sides that are, if not under the radar, or only just sort of coming onto the edge of the radar. They've been going quietly about their business in recent games. They're particularly strong at home, and I sort of wanted to share some stats. It shows that really Portland in the second half is sort of at home is sort of where they come to the fore. So they've in the first half of games at home, they've won 3, drawn 3, and lost 4 for a -1 goal difference. Now you flip that around and look at their second half performance, and it's not LA standard, but still pretty good. They've won 5, drawn 3, lost 2, scored 14, conceded 7. So I think they're a team that's traditionally strong at home. It takes them a while to get going, and I think they might edge this one. Portland to win the second half at even money, or draw Portland in the first half, second half market to 5.2 is sort of what caught my eye on this one.
Yeah, I think this is another one. I kind of like the home team here, Portland, so I want to stay away from it in general because I just don't think it's a big enough number for me. San Jose is they're a team that can score goals, so maybe you take both teams to score. It's not like Portland has been completely shut down at home as far as defensively. But yeah, you're right. Portland feels like the better team to me in this game, so I guess I lean that way. I just don't love the number that I'm getting on Portland. 168 is pretty low for a team that I'm not completely sold on. I don't like San Jose enough either way, really, to bet this game, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. That's why I sort of haven't looking elsewhere rather than the match odds. 1.68 is pretty short. And just to add to that sort of second half stat number, if you actually compare that to San Jose in the second half when playing away from home. They haven't won a single second half. They've drawn 3 of those and lost 7 and only scored 5 goals in the second half when playing away from home. So that's sort of why I'd be looking at the draw Portland or Portland second half to get a better pricing value on a likely Portland win, but I wouldn't be touching them in the full 19 match odds market. There's just no interest at that price.
Yeah, I think that's 100% the right treat of you barking up there. Now, that's all the games that we need to cover. So quickly, we'll just go through our Predictology 101 segment. So again, this is for people who are maybe a little newer to the betting scene, or just want to learn a little bit more about Predictology itself. This could be anything from a topic of betting in general, or with the website. And today we have kind of a newer thing on the website here, and I'll let you explain it because you'll do a much better job than I will. But we have a new dashboard for the different betting systems that users can use. So what is the kind of draw here? What's the benefit, and how can we take advantage of this, John?
Yeah, that's right, Kris. So up until this week, as standard, whenever a member has joined Predictology, they get access to a wealth of tools and ability to build their own systems and strategies. But what we try to do is sort of help people along a little bit. And we provided 18 models that we've built ourselves, that we use ourselves from our own system builder tool. So it gives people an immediate starting place to start finding some value bets and some profitable bets. But what we've done over the last couple of weeks is rebuilt the top page for that. So now when you go into it, you'll see a very easy to read a database table, and it will show you for each and every system that's available to them as a member, the number of bets, how many they've won, the strike rate, profit, the ROI, broken down over an all-time period, the last 3-month period, and in the current month. So they can see which systems perform and how they perform over a period of time, but also which ones are performing the best at the current time. They can sort that by each of those statistics. They can sort it by the bet type. So that, for example, a member may be only interested in placing back bets, or someone like yourself, Kris, where betting in play is a little bit harder in your location. They might want to avoid the lay bets, or if conversely, that might be their style of betting that's suited. So it's a really nice, we've had some great feedback. It's really easily navigatable. And still, like before, you can click into each system and then go as deep as you want in terms of drawdowns, return on capital, how it performs from a percentage staging. So all of that information is still there, but this just gives people a very easily navigatable overview of each of the systems, and they can then start exploring those at their leisure. And then on top of that, what we're rolling out this week, and we're almost finished, is actually we're boosting those numbers from 18 to 36 as well. So now, as standard, all members will get access to 36 different betting models and the selections that go with that. And I think that's a great starting point for anyone who's new, right through to more experienced bettors, and you can really sort of build your own mini portfolio within the models that are being provided. So I think it's a great addition to the site and the platform.
It's an absolutely wonderful addition, and something that I think we really needed to cover here in Predictology 101, because it is really a tool to kind of get you started on Predictology and get you started with learning some of the systems before you're kind of experienced enough to learn how to build your own system. They're kind of prefabricated systems that have been proven to work over time that we use here in order to make us profitable. We also share that with you. Obviously, like John said, doubling the number of systems, which is just great for everybody. More options, more ways to customize things so that it fits into your specific betting strategy. And like John said, you can kind of go as deep as you want with everything here. So the great part for people that are new and maybe not even on the platform yet, we're actually offering a free trial, or not a free trial. Sorry, it's £1, which is I know it's a lot. It's a really lot there, John. But yeah, it's a £1 trial for anyone to be able to try these systems out, see how they work for you, and how you can kind of use them in order to profit from them.
Yeah, exactly. And I think another important factor to mention is that although these systems have been designed and developed using historical data, it's not backdated in terms of, retrofitted these systems to make them look good. They all use minimal filters, and although they may have been built a few years ago in terms of using this historical data, they've all been live tested going forward for at least a year, more in most cases 2 or 3 years. So you can be very confident in terms of the past results and the live testing. There's no guarantee on future performance of any system or model, but these are about as robust as can be. And in terms of the trial, yeah, it's a fantastic opportunity. If you've never used the platform, or it's been a long time since you gave us a try, it's a great way to come in, have a full week, use all the tools, test out the models. You know, contact me. I'm always here, happy to come have a chat around your own betting objectives, whether that's through email or on the Discord channel. But yeah, for £1, it's a great opportunity to get to really experience the full power of Predictology and the side effects for you.
And fun fact, John never sleeps, so you can always get in contact with him at pretty much any time of the day. I found that you can get in contact with John. He's like always around. I don't know if he's like a vampire or something and he just never sleeps, but he is a man that works very, very hard. So he is always able to be, contacted, which is really, really cool as well. I think that wraps up.
You know what's funny? You know what's funny about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say what's funny about that is you're the second person this week that said exactly the same thing to me. One of our pro community members was also saying, John seems to be here 24/7 giving us advice on trades and matches. So yeah, it's not quite true, but it certainly feels like that at times.
It's incredible. All hours that I'm awake, I'm constantly getting messages from you. And all hours that I'm asleep, I'm constantly getting messages from you. So I don't know how that works. Like maybe you got it automated somehow. I don't know. It's like a really realistic robot you built or something that just does everything for you. It's fantastic, whatever it is.
No, it's called a 2-year-old daughter. Not much sleep.
It's wild. So let's go ahead. Let's wrap things up here with best bets because we are running a little over on time. Let's wrap things up with best bets, and we'll go through what do we do? Favorite, value, and best overall bet.
Yes, a best bet, favorite bet, and value bet, so best overall bet. So I'll quickly run through mine as a 1, 2, 3 and let you do it as well. So my best bet has to be what I was suggesting. Where's it gone? I've lost my notes now, but I think it was LA to go over to Kansas and win. Yeah. I think they're great value in the win market. I was wanting to get an extra bit of value in the second half, but I'm just gonna stick with the same as last week, an LA win in that game.
Yeah, that's what I have down as my best overall bet is LA to win in Sporting Kansas City 2.12. Obviously we both like the number a whole lot, so that's gonna be that one. What about your favorite of the week?
Yeah, agreed. My favorite bet, I think I'm going to have to go with Austin to win. I think the price at 2.5 is a big one. It's going to be a fascinating game, but I think that Texan factor will probably be key in this one. So I'm going to take Austin for that one.
Well, I had Austin as my value bet because they're over evens. So I may have cheated there a little bit. I'm going Seattle as my favorite bet. 1.9 at home against Colorado Rapids. I expect Seattle to break out of this little funk. You're right, this could end in a draw here, but I think the odds are better than 50-50 that it ends in a Seattle win. So 1.9 is pretty close to evens. I'll take Seattle as my favorite of the week.
Excellent. So, yep, I admire the faith in Seattle. They let you down last week and you're back on the horse this week with them. So good luck with that. My value bet, there's only one easy pick for me on this. And we've covered it right at the top of the show. In a 50-50 game, taking Atlanta at 4.5 is huge value for me. And that's my value bet of the week.
You probably have the better value bet of the week there. Yours is certainly more likely to hit. I do feel bad taking Austin because I do see they're a slight favorite in that game, so I can't really take them as my value. I'm going to take Toronto to keep a clean sheet. How about that as my value bet? Because I know that's not going to be, I know that's not going to be good odds. I'm going to pick up the baton here and carry this for the show, and we're going to be right one of these days. So I want to be the one that's right. So that'll be my value bet of the week.
Sounds good. Let's hope we're right before the 100th episode of the show.
Probably unlikely given how Toronto is going, but hey, they may get Tyler Miller as a trade, so maybe they'll get a goalkeeper. I don't know. We'll see. If there's ever going to be a week, this is the week.
I can't disagree with you. I just couldn't. My shame would not let me pick them for the third week in a row. So good luck.
I will say Charlotte did just beat Chelsea on penalties, so I don't feel confident that Toronto's better than Chelsea, but yeah, I don't care. I went with it. Who cares? So yeah, I think that will wrap things up here. We'll let them get to that wedding there in the background. That sounds like it's going to be quite the event. I hope you are invited, or maybe you're just crashing. I don't know, but we'll let them get to it
at the moment.
Well, we will see you guys next week. Thanks for joining, and have a good one.
Thanks, everyone. Bye bye.